Now, he's been our Prime Minister for just over 4 months, but will Boris Johnson still be living in number 10 by the end of next week?
Well, after we were joined by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn on Tuesday, the Prime Minister joins us now ahead of next week's general election. Good morning.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Good morning, Holly.
Nice
Good morning.
So looking at the polls and what people say after various debates, those who like you say, we like him, but we don't trust him. There's a big trust issue with you.
Well, I think there's a big trust issue with the whole of politics at the moment, Philip. And I think that is basically because after 3.5 years, we haven't got done what we told the people we would do in 2016. We asked them to vote in the EU referendum. They did deliver a result. And then for the last 3.5 years, we've been just wrangling. And I got to the stage as Prime Minister when it was obvious that we couldn't get this thing through Parliament. The Parliament couldn't do anything, and all the wonderful things that we want to do for the country, whether it's on the NHS or infrastructure or putting huge amounts into education, making our streets safer, we were being blocked by a sort of broken Parliament. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. All we need now is a working majority. We can move forwards.
I appreciate that, but you've had...
on the trust thing.
10 years
Yes.
in government. And
What?
still there is a trust issue with
Most
the
of that
party.
time.
There is a trust issue with you.
Well, most of that time, actually, and I came on your show lots of time, I was Mayor of London. And if you look at what I did, and what I said I would do, and what we delivered, it was, I think, pretty good. And, you know, I said we'd cut crime. We cut crime by a huge amount. We had a huge investment in transport. We cut tube delays by 30%. We outbuilt Labour on affordable homes. And since I stood on the steps of Downing Street 4 months ago, because it's really 4 months, you know, we said we'd put in 20,000 more police for the whole country. Those numbers are coming in now, and I've met them as they're being recruited. You know, fantastic to see them, young women signing up to work in our police force. They're doing an amazing job. Many, many more thousands coming through. We were going to have 50,000 more nurses in our NHS. 20 hospital upgrades.
Now, this is the issue. I know you've got lots that you want to say. I appreciate that. I know, but we've got lots of topics we have to get through. So I'm sorry for interrupting. But you did mention the nurses.
Yes.
And so
I know what you're going to say.
Do you?
Well,
what am I going to say?
Well, I may be wrong.
That means you're worried about something.
What am I going to say, Prime Minister? What I am going to say...
I'm going to say that they're not new nurses.
I'm going to say that 19,000 of the 50,000 you promised are retained. So otherwise they would have left. 14,000 nurses would be recruited through new undergraduate students. But the figures show 1 in 20 student nursing places, that's 1,450 in total, went unfilled in 2019. It's not an appealing job. From 2016 to February this year, nursing degree applications in England fell by 13,000. Okay. Where are they coming from?
Couple of quick points.
Yeah.
We will have 50,000 more nurses. First of all, we're bringing the bursary back, the £5,000 a year bursary, which I think will make it more attractive and easier. We're also going to make sure in the short term that we deal with the shortage by something I think is very much appreciated by the NHS, and that is squeezing the time that people have to wait to get their visas to come and be nurses in the NHS. We want to train up more nurses in this country. We also want to make it easier.
This has come from one of our doctors here, yes. Dr. Sarah. Plans to initiate a new nurse tax for those being recruited from the EU, including visa fees, immigration, health surcharges. This means a family could expect to pay £10,000 in their first 5 years of working in the NHS. So how are you planning to recruit so many nurses without the help from the EU?
No, we're bringing back the bursary for nurses. And I don't quite know what Sarah means, but it is only fair that people who come to this country and make use of our services from wherever they come from should make a contribution. And that's what, you know, so if people coming from around the world do that, and I think that's reasonable. And one of the advantages of getting Brexit done, which is what we can do with our oven-ready deal, don't forget,
we'll come to that.
It's there, ready to go, is that we can take back control of our immigration system with a points-based Australian-style system, which enables us to, you know, make sure we can bring in nurses for the NHS, but make sure also that we reduce the pressure on the NHS and other public services by uncontrolled immigration. And frankly, the policy of Mr Corbyn and the Labour Party is to keep uncontrolled and unlimited immigration, which I don't think is sensible.
We've drifted off our subject for the moment, and that's the NHS.
Yes.
So will those nurses still be required if you've sold it to the Americans?
No, this is absolute nonsense. And I think a scare story that comes up time and time again at every election. I love the NHS. It is the most fantastic institution. And look at what we are doing. As I said many times, it exemplifies the very best of our country.
Is the NHS on the table?
No.
Has it ever been on the table? There's a dossier that says it was.
And there are photographs that purport to prove that there are UFOs. But it's complete nonsense.
Absolute rock-solid guarantee.
Rock-solid
No part of the NHS will be sold on.
No part. And what we are doing, as a one-nation Conservative government, we're investing massively in the NHS.
But what we do know
is the biggest
is
cash boost. And the key thing is, Philip, Holly, the key thing is that we can continue these investments in the NHS because we're running a strong economy.
You just said no part of the NHS will be sold off.
Absolutely not.
Right. So, American companies providing about 13% of inpatient beds in England, in Manchester, 1 in 4 beds provided by an American-owned company in Bristol, North Somerset, Gloucestershire. 3/5 of mental health care beds are owned by American companies. Signet runs 8 mental health settings judged inadequate by the Quality Care Commission watchdog. £13.8 billion was spent on the NHS on mental health care. 1.8 billion of this went to private sectors, including American companies. You're already doing it.
No. The biggest privatisation of the NHS took place under Labour when they put in the PFI scheme. That was in my view, and I go around hospitals which are saddled with debt that they have to pay back to banks at excruciating rates because of Labour's PFI deal, when we should be putting that money straight into patient care. We're investing massive quantities, £34 billion, straight into the NHS now. And the reason we're going to be able to continue to do that is because we run a strong economy and we believe in the NHS. And what we won't do is have crankish solutions like a 4-day week that would basically make it impossible to run the NHS or indeed any public service.
So you'll stop selling off any other areas of the private sector?
Under no circumstances.
And they're not performing. Just this week we heard the story of a schizophrenic man who killed his father days after being mistakenly released from a Signet private hospital. Well,
obviously we have challenges with mental health care, and the NHS as a whole is doing an amazing job. That's why we want to make sure that we invest massively in mental health care as well as in physical well-being, and we're putting a huge amount into it. But we also want to make sure that people don't feel stigmatised for their mental health problems. And there is a huge amount that I think we can do as a society to turn that right. And that will be good also for our physical well-being and our physical health. The NHS, actually, you look at what it achieves in, say, in cancer care. Incredible progress that's being made just under this government.
We've got a lot of subjects to cover today, and I do just want to move on to...
We want to invest and we want to make further
Understood. I want to talk about safety. In light of the terror attacks last week, a lot of people in this country feeling very unsafe at the moment.
Well, I think that they shouldn't, Holly, feel unsafe. I think this is one of the safest countries in the world. And generally, you know, as I was mentioning, when I was running London, we massively reduced crime and we reduced murder rate by about 50%. And that's my approach. We want to put 20,000 more officers out on the street. But just on people's feelings, they're very important. And simple things like stopping the early release of serious and violent criminals, that's what we've got to do. We've got to stop people coming out early and then committing the same sorts of crimes again.
Azman Khan didn't even see a parole board.
And that's so interesting, Philip, because he didn't have to. It was quite incredible. Under the law, it was absolutely automatic. He was sprung after only half his time simply because of the type of sentence he had received.
So do we just lock him up and throw away the key? Is that what should have been done?
I think actually there is always you must always try to rehabilitate people. You've always got to give people a chance. And one of the saddest things is how many kids come out of young offenders institutions and immediately reoffend. And you've got to try to turn their lives around. But there are some people there are some people, and I think probably this guy is one of them, who just are not capable of being changed. And in his case, the best thing for the public and for him was to keep him inside.
Does it
help?
It
was wrong to have early release. And so there's a bill that we've got ready, was in the Queen's speech, in this blocked Parliament, that we could get going and would enable us
Does
to
it
get rid of
help
automatic
that
early release.
that a Prime Minister of this great nation would use the terms bank robber and letterbox to describe Muslim women who wear a burqa?
Well, you know, people, Philip, dig out all sorts of
You said it.
all sorts of articles.
You said it.
And
what do you say to that?
What I can certainly say, if I do not ever set out in any of the
Would you like to apologise
thousands of
for it?
articles, what I will say is, and I've already said sorry for any offence that I've caused, and I say it again, but let me be very clear that I don't set out to cause offence in what I've written. I think what people want to know is, what are we going to do now?
Yeah, no, what people want to know, if you're going to be Prime Minister, why would you say something like that?
Well, I think it's always worth looking at what the whole article says and what I'm really intending to say, because actually it's quite the opposite. And I'm very proud of my record on combating extremism and indeed of my Muslim ancestry. And I'm a proud defender of this incredible nation that we have, that draws people, attracts people from around the world. But what we will do is have an independent inquiry into prejudice and xenophobia of all kinds. And I do think that is the way forward. I want to run a country where people feel at ease with themselves and with the country.
The problem is, when you say that, and I do want to just jump in here,
Yes,
sorry, because there was an article you wrote in '95, and again, this will get dragged up because you are the Prime Minister, and you said just now that you took people's feelings into consideration.
Yes.
You just said that here. However, at the time, you branded single mothers irresponsible and the working class men drunk, criminal and feckless. That's going to hurt feelings. This is alienating our viewers watching here today. This is alienating many people
Well,
that don't know who to... But it is. You must be able to understand how hurtful that is to someone's feelings.
Of course, if stuff is dragged out of context, but I don't think that this is the time to talk about articles that were written really quite a long time ago.
Still, those thoughts are still in your head.
No, because, well, look at again, it depends what you think the articles are actually saying. But look at what we are doing. So you mention mothers. Well, what we're doing as a One Nation Conservative government is we're investing massively in childcare. In the manifesto, fantastic plans for wraparound childcare in the morning, in the evening. Look at what we're doing on safety
to make
for kids in school. Mr. Corbyn and the Labour Party would actually abolish Ofsted, which keeps kids safe.
I've got to interrupt you there purely because we're trying to give you the same amount of time that we gave Mr. Corbyn.
Yes.
So I have to finally ask you.
Is it finally? Is that
yeah, it is. It's
not
12 minutes. I've got to say, and very quickly, I'm afraid, can you get us out cleanly? Do you promise?
I promise. I absolutely promise. If we get a working majority, if we get just 9 seats more, we can be out on January the 31st.
And how long will the trade deals take?
And, well, we will
years.
We can get, we will do many new deals with countries around the world, but with the EU, we can build a new free trade partnership by the end of next year. And it's a very exciting prospect. And the thing is, all those other things we've talked about, whether they're investing in the NHS, mental health, investing in childcare, fighting crime, all those things that we want to do. Look, what brings me to politics is giving opportunity to everybody in this country. It's an amazing country. It's got incredible potential. It's being held back at the moment by the political refusal to deliver on the will of the people. We have an amazing choice in the next few days. We either get Brexit done and move forward, unite the country, unleash its potential, or we have a year of dither, delay, defeatism, despair, with 2 more referendums, one on Scotland, for heaven's sake, and one on the EU.
You've made some promises this morning, so I think the country can have seen it now. I think we can
Thank you.
Prime Minister,
hold
thank
you
you very
to
much
them.
for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you.